العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. All praise and thanks belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. May the peace and blessing of Allah be upon His servant and final messenger Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. As to what follows, my dear respected brothers in Islam, there's a concept, it's a grammatical concept that's in the Quran, that it's, of course we read by and we read it and we go over it, but when one appreciates it and understands the deep meaning of it, you'll see you'll see an amazing aspect in the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that is the idea of the passive and the active verb being used in the Quran. I'll simplify that in examples. So sometimes Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ascribes creation to Himself, and sometimes He does not ascribe it to Himself, but the understanding of it's that to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So for example, Allah Azza wa Jal would say, لَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانِ, we created the human being. And in other places, خُلِقَ الْإِنسَانِ, the human being was created. So the active form is to say we created the human being. The passive form is to say the human being was created. And this comes in the Quran on both instances. And this is basically the active and the passive. Now what's beautiful about this is that you'll always find that when the active form is mentioned, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would speak immediately after it about something that is good in nature, something that is positive in nature. So when Allah Azza wa Jal says, لَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا, we created the human being, a positive term to that after it is أَحْسَنِ تَقْوِيمٍ, in the best of fashion. So Allah Azza wa Jal takes pride in the fact that He perfected the creation of the human being. But when when Allah Azza wa Jal speaks about a weakness of the human being, then He does not ascribe it to Himself. So for example, وَخُلِقَ الْإِنسَانُ ضَعِيفًا, the human being was created in weakness. Obviously Allah Azza wa Jal created him, but Allah does not attach, He doesn't say وَخَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ ضَعِيفًا, we created the human being in weakness. When there's a negative term, when there's a weak term like the word weakness, then it comes in the passive form. The human being was created weak. For example, خُلِقَ الْإِنسَانُ هَلُوعًا, that the human being was created impatient. خُلِقَ الْإِنسَانُ عَجُولًا, the human being was created in rush. But everything on the better side, then Allah Azza wa Jal would ascribe Himself to it. And that's not only in the creation, it's also in Allah, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave the books and the laws. So for example, those who adopted by the law of Allah and those who held firmly to the book, there was pride in them. That was something good. So Allah Azza wa Jal would say, الَّذِينَ آتَيْنَاهُمُ الْكِتَابِ, those who we gave them the book. But the people that Allah gave the book and they failed the book, and they did not abide by the laws, then Allah Azza wa Jal would say, مِنَ الَّذِينَ أُوتُوا الْكِتَابِ, those who were given the book. He wouldn't say that He gave them the book. Why? Because they failed the book and they did not hold to its laws. Now, giving that as an overview and as an outline, you'll always understand that when you read something that is in the passive form, meaning when the creator or the doer of the action is not mentioned, then there's something of weakness to it. And when Allah Azza wa Jal, the doer of the action, is mentioned, then this is referring to something positive in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's creation. But then there's just one slight thing to understand, and that comes in Surah At-Tin, and this is where really it will shine. Allah Azza wa Jal said immediately after that ayah, لَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ فِي أَحْسَنِ تَقْوِيمٍ, He said after it, ثُمَّ رَدَدْنَاهُ أَسْفَلَ سَافِلِينَ, He said then we returned him to the lowest of low. The human being returned to the lowest of low, and there are many tafsir for this. One of the tafsir is that the human being is returned to old age, that is lowest of low. How is that understood? In terms of physical activity, the human being, once he becomes old, he becomes even weaker than an animal. How is that the case? Because an animal can work and can serve until it drops dead. It can carry things until the day it dies. But the human being, he works, once he gets old, he gets to a stage, he can't even lift a box, he can't do anything. So that's asfala safilin, meaning he got to an old age, he became so weak, even weaker than an animal when the animal reaches old age. That is lowest of low, radadnahu asfala safilin. But you know, radadnahu asfala safilin, the other meaning of it is that we threw him in the lowest pits of the fire. It's got something to do with the hellfire as well. And other meanings about the kafir himself, that Allah Azza wa Jal created him in the best of fashion, meaning He gave him iman, and He created him from the outside good, from the inside good. And then this kafir, he did not uphold to what Allah taught him, so Allah Azza wa Jal threw him into the lowest of low, meaning he became lower than an animal. You know, an animal, just explain the concept of asfala safilin, then I'll go back to the word radadnahu, to go back to the original what we're discussing. The human being, subhanallah, if you're comparing to the animal, for these the kuffar that rebelled and caused corruption in the earth, they became lower than an animal. How is that the case? The animal would only attack another animal if it needs to eat, or it'll attack another animal if that animal has put it in danger. So to get rid of the danger, it'll only attack in terms of what will get rid of the danger, and it will only attack what it needs to eat. But the human being, the corrupt human being, he'll attack even if he's full. He'll attack others even if he's full. And he'll attack and he'll damage and he'll put others in danger even if he wasn't in danger. So you see, there's a level for the animal where he gets to, and the animal is something low, and the human being trespasses that, therefore he became asfala safirin, lowest of the low, meaning lower than an animal. And the animals in their nature, they don't do horrible crimes such as human beings that cause corruption, for example, mass murder, rape, and so on. Animals don't do that. So when the human being trespasses and does that, he's become lowest of low. So what I'm trying to get to is that asfala safilin is something that is in the negative sense. It's not in the positive sense. So why did Allah say, radadnahu asfala safilin? We returned him to the lowest of low. Remember, we said when there's something of positive term, Allah ascribes Himself to it. خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ فِي أَحْسَنِ تَقْوِيمٍ آتَيْنَاهُمُ الْكِتَابِ وَلَقَدْ آتَيْنَا لُقْمَانَ الْحِكْمَةِ. Luqman was given wisdom, that's a good thing, so Allah ascribes it to Himself. And when something is in the negative, it's not ascribed to Allah. Utul kitab is for people that have failed the book. خُلِقَ الْإِنسَانُ ضَعِيفًا, and so on. Now, when He said radadnahu, if you look at the principle, you are expecting ثُمَّ رُدَّ أَسْفَلَ سَافِلِينَ, that Allah wouldn't ascribe that to Himself because it's a negative term. Except that the only way it'll work out is that Allah ascribes it to Himself, and I tell you how. Had the ayah been لَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ فِي أَحْسَنِ تَقْوِيمٍ ثُمَّ رُدَّ أَسْفَلَ سَافِلِينَ, there would have been a problem with Allah's creation. Why? Because if I was, let me give you an example so you can understand this. If I say to you, I built a table, it broke the next day. What does that mean? That means I wasn't good in building a table. If I said, I raised a boy, he was a murderer. He was a murderer. That means I wasn't good at raising a boy. But if I was to say, I built a table, I destroyed it the next day, it doesn't have to do anything with the way I created it. It just simply says that I had power, I built it, and I destroyed it with my own hands. So when Allah Azza wa Jal says, لَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا, we created the human being in best of fashion. And then He says, and we returned him to the lowest of low. SubhanAllah, Allah Azza wa Jal even preserved that much so that no one would say that if the human being was returned to the lowest of low, meaning there would have been a problem with the best creation that Allah Azza wa Jal created. This idea of He created in the best fashion. So that even that criticism Allah Azza wa Jal cuts out by saying, I returned him. So what that means is the human being was created in the best of fashion. What does that mean? From the outside and from the inside. Ahsan comes from the word hasan, which means both on the outside and the inside. Meaning he was created in the best of fashion from the inside. His taqwa, iman, the fitra was given to him, or was all good. And from the outside, his creation was good. His creation was compatible to the job he was given, which is to worship Allah. Right? You've been created in that form. That means your creation is the most suited to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in. But when the human being did not, when he didn't take care, and when he did not make use of this good fashion that Allah created him, and didn't make use of the fitra and iman Allah put inside of him, when he failed in that, then Allah returned him to the lowest of low. So Allah gave him tasks. He didn't do the tasks, then Allah returned him. So by Allah saying, we returned him to the lowest of low, the fact that He ascribed it to Himself, although it's something negative, is so He can close that door so no one could say that there was a problem in Allah's creation. Because had He said rudda, then the problem would have been is that he was returned to the lowest of low, meaning that there was something wrong in Allah Azza wa Jal creating the best. Subhanallah. So even that Allah Azza wa Jal closed, and that is the only place it comes in the Quran when Allah ascribes that negative term to Himself. And that was the reason for it. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us an insight in the Quran, to give us a deeper understanding of the Quran, and to make us people of the Quran, people who benefit from the reminders of the Quran. إنه ولي ذلك والقادر عليه. وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين.